Hi, I'm Chuck Fletcher.
Hi, my name is Ali Vigneault, coach of the Flyers.
Hey, I'm Travis Konechny.
Hey, this is Jeremy Roenick.
Hi, this is Travis Sanheim.
Hi, I'm Paul Holmgren.
Hey, I'm Scott Lawton.
Hi, I'm Joel Farabee.
Hi, this is Bob Clark.
And you're listening to Snow the Goalie.
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 Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, the turkeys. Turkey time, baby. We're close. It's time to give some thanks. A little Thanksgiving, if you will, not only for what's about to be on our table in the next however many hours whenever you're listening to this, but for Flyers hockey. There's a lot to be thankful for. I don't actually know if that's true. But welcome into Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, the Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Presidential Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, Papers Podcast, the only Flyers podcast. Let's get right into the action. A man who started a firestorm last week, and that, of course, is Chris Terrian Bundy, who you can find on Twitter at CTerrian6. Bundy, how you feeling today? You want to pour some more gasoline on the fire, or are we kind of having like a chill Thanksgiving?
No, I think we're going to have a good Thanksgiving. I mean, listen, I don't think we went out of any context other than the things that we've seen. It's in front of your eyes if you just take a look. I mean, it really is. So, I mean, for me, you know what, it was a good week. I mean, I think that it's been a tough couple of weeks all around. First of all, by the way the team is playing, that event last week did not go, I don't think, the way people wanted to see it go. So we spoke up about it. But right now, I think a major concern outside of what's going on at the top is actually the team itself. Anthony, I know we've talked, and Russ, you know what? This is not getting any easier. Remember, we were hoping for 18 points in 36 games, or excuse me, 30. Was it? Yeah, that's it. Teams. We were looking for like 18 points, right?
I said they need to get at least a point a game to stay in the playoff race.
And I think you and I had said that it was like 24 to 26 would have been a really successful run here.
Where are they, Russ? Do we have any? They're nowhere near that, are they?
They're not close. Anthony will crunch the numbers over there. He's going to be our resident math guy for the week. I flexed my math muscles last week. So
we meet before the show and we talk about everything we're going to say, and then this comes up. Well, where are they? Nobody asks me beforehand to look it up, so now I got to sit here and add some points together. That's all right.
Nobody asked me, guys.
It doesn't matter, but I'm just saying they're below that number, way below.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, right now it's not good. Now, can they get to the point total that we hope they would get to? Maybe, possibly. They're going to need divine intervention or some serious shakeups to probably get there.
They're 3-4-2 through halfway through 9 games. So they're 3-4-2. So they got 8 of the out of 18 so far.
There you go.
So they're going to have to get 10 out of 18 in the second half of this in order to hit that minimum of 18 points.
Mm-hmm. That's not good. That's what we in the business call not good. All right, let's get to the other man who you just heard from. He likes to start fires of his own. I don't know if he's going to do it this week, but he does have a very nice little coiffed faux hawk going for those who are watching over on YouTube. And that, of course, is Anthony Sanfilippo. Find him on Twitter at AntSanPhilly. How you doing, pal?
This is the beauties of working from home, right? Yeah, you just roll out of bed and you're going to work. I'm doing good. Like Bundy said, it's really just kind of disappointing to see the way the team has played over the last 3 games. I mean, you sit there, you kind of knew at some point they weren't going to be able to keep it up defensively with Ellis out of the lineup as long as he is. You can only rely on Justin Braun as a top line defenseman for so long. You can only rely on Nick Seeler and Keith Yandel as a pair for so long. And before things started to go sideways. And I thought, you look at it and say, man, Yandel and Seeler were way overmatched by Tampa last night. And it wasn't even a great Tampa team. Obviously, Kucherov hasn't played yet this year, and Braden Point is out of the lineup. So it was kind of like their second team for the most part. But even still, they looked bad. And then I thought Provorov had a bad game last night. I thought Provorov looked a lot like Provorov of last year when he, just kind of isn't the top guy. And so, you start to worry. We sit here and talk about the offenses and scoring, and it's not. But I'm also starting to worry a little bit now about how they're playing defensively. And this isn't on the goalie. Carter Hart still had a decent game last night. But you start to worry a little bit about how the defense is playing in front of him. Man, if you can't start to fix this and fix it quick, this season can go off the rails real fast, and that would be a bad thing for this organization.
Well, and let's take a look really quick because we did the update last week of where the Flyers were, and it was bad in terms of goal scoring. It was really bad last week. I think they were in 19th place, if memory serves correct. They were all the way down to 27th out of 32 teams in the NHL in scoring at 2.53 goals per game. That's anemic. Anemic might be a nice way to put it. I'm just looking really quick to see where they're at in goals against. I know that it's a higher number, but I think defensively, they're 23rd, 2.71 goals against per game. Obviously, a big part of that is the lack of Ryan Ellis in the lineup, arguably the biggest offseason pickup. I mean, it was him and Cam Atkinson were really the crown jewels, if you want to call them that, of Chuck Fletcher's offseason. Ellis made his way back into the lineup briefly and is now out 4 to 6 weeks. God knows what that's actually going to look like. Is it really going to be 4 to 6 weeks? Are they going to have to hold him out longer? Or are they going to want to hold him out longer in the hopes that he is able to get himself back into some sort of shape where he's not going to aggravate the same injury yet again? And now you have the even bigger issue. And I know we talked about this last week, but we really do have to face a realistic question here that I want to get into with you guys, which is Kevin Hayes is now being listed as week to week. He was back for a game when he initially retweaked the injury. They're saying week to week, but isn't that almost kind of delaying what might be the inevitable? Like, there's a chance here that he's going to be shut down for longer. There's a possibility out there that he could possibly require another core muscle surgery. If that's the case, doesn't it behoove them to just put him on LTIR, try to get him healthy, and maybe if you make a playoff run, you bring him back, you do the Kucherov thing from a year ago, and you just hope? Because right now you have no cap space to go out and make any real acquisitions. You can't address the need that you have on that top pair with Ivan Provorov. You can't really do anything externally to bring in help to fill that 2C gap. What do they do? Bundy, should they shut him down? Should Kevin Hayes be shut down, put on LTIR, and get that salary cap relief, if for no other reason than to try to bring in reinforcements?
Oh, I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning made a joke about it last year after they won the cup, with Kucherov standing on the podium with the salary cap relief thing. I mean, they found a way through it. The problem is with this team, guys, is this team's not good enough to make the playoffs with even a guy like Kevin Hayes. He's a good player. He's not a game-changing type of player, though. I mean, in terms of where you're at, I mean, if you're relying on Kevin Hayes to make the playoffs, I don't know how that would work anyway. He was healthy last year, and they didn't make major strides as the season went on anyway. But if you can shut him down, of course, Russ, that's the question. Get some cap relief, find another player. But my issue is that Tampa's a different animal because they were able to actually do that with Kucherov because they were so deep. 2 Stanley Cups will in less than a calendar year, and having the best defenseman in the game in the last 15 years and the best goalie in the league in the last decade certainly helps that. The Flyers don't have that luxury of taking a Kevin Hayes, sliding him over to the side and crossing their fingers and make the playoffs to get him back. That's just not a feasible formula. It looks like it's going to have to be Morgan Frost, who's about a point. He's about a point a game, I think, in the minors with 3 goals. I don't know if that's a long-term solvent, guys. And now Brassard goes down with an injury last night. First of all, they outside of Coots, I don't think that they really ever had like a big enough guy at center anyway. Like, I think you need 2 pieces of size up the middle. They don't have any of that. And now, as Anthony said, with the 2C, I mean, you're going to play in the league with somebody who's either a minor leaguer or Derek Brassard at this stage in his career. You're already way behind the 8 ball, and you're probably staring down the barrel of a shotgun right now in terms of where your season's at. Week to week, you may as well call it month to month. It's certainly because they don't know where he's at in that injury. But yes, that would be probably the way to go, Russ, would be to shut him down and go out and acquire somebody that you think is going to be able to help your team. What that is, I don't know. I just don't know what that looks like for the short term or the long term. Anthony, it's a tricky situation. And it felt, guys, I think we felt all along, we've talked about this. This has felt like a house of cards from day one. It really has, with the injuries, and again, Ellis coming in, Ellis is a good player. Again, I don't know how much difference he would have made over the course, of staying. being in the lineup. How much better would he have made Provorov? But nothing's working right now in terms of where they're at. Special teams is off, especially the power play, and they're having trouble finding their footing. But I just don't know what you can do for a quick fix right now, except probably calling up one of the guys from the minors, Anthony, and then hoping that goes well. And I don't think that that's going to work.
So here's the thing, and you're right. I mean, there's nothing you can do right now. You gotta survive with what you have, and the Flyers. If I don't know if the NHL fans are really aware of this, but throughout the organization, down in the Phantoms are absolutely decimated with injuries right now. They're signing guys off the street to come in and play because they really have nobody down there with all the injuries that they have. So organizationally, their depth has really been tested. Not that it was great depth to begin with, but it's really been tested with a lot of injuries, down on the farm. So you really don't have much to go with other than what we've seen so far. I mean, these are the guys that are going to get called up. I mean, we've been waiting for Frost, I guess, in a way, and he has to play like we talked about back in preseason. Has to play in a scoring role. You're not calling up Morgan Frost to play the fourth line. No. But here's the thing that I'm wondering, and I'm putting as we're sitting here recording this, it's not live on the site yet, but I guess by the time people are listening to the podcast, you can find this column on crossingbroad.com. The thing that I'm wondering is this. The Flyers went all in the offseason with Chuck's moves, right? These big moves that he made and bringing 9 new faces to the organization. So if you go all in the summer, can you just bail out now? Or do you have to remain all in? And by that, the question is that do you have to now, with Ellis and Hayes out long term, do you have to try to do something else to stay all in this season? And to me, that's the big question. Are you willing to give up something of real value? Because usually there's no trades this early in the year. Usually the trade conversations are quiet. I can tell you that, and I know people are going to say, here goes Anthony on this train again, because I was the guy who reported that they were trying to trade Voracek for Tarasenko back in the summer when they were going to utilize Seattle as the middleman as part of the expansion draft to make that happen. But I can tell you that the St. Louis Blues have sent some heavy hitters to the Wells Fargo Center to watch the Flyers play lately. And we also know
and really quick, I don't mean to interrupt you. I know the answer. This Bundy knows the answer, but there are some people who are listening who probably don't understand like what you mean or how. How do you know that St. Louis has sent people to Wells Fargo Center? Give the people the very easy, tangible answer.
Well, we sit in the press box and we see who's there. I mean, that's number one. But
that's
it.
No, I don't. That was all I wanted. I just wanted to insert that because I don't want people to be like, oh, were you looking in a box? Did you have binoculars out? Were they just sitting in the lower bowl? Like, no, it's not that. There's the full list. I mean, you see what organization guys are from too, but it's name recognition as well. So continue. Sorry, there's a big difference. Like, we might not know who a specific scout is. So therefore, when you're coming in and you walk over to that list that's on the board and you look and you see these names and you say, oh, okay, well, who's that guy and who does he work for? And you find out the organization. And then who it is when they're there and you're like, oh, okay, so that's their scout. All right. And then you can kind of like put a name to a face and you start to learn a little bit. But when Doug Armstrong, who is the general manager of the St. Louis Blues, comes to watch a Flyers game, as he did against Calgary, I believe it was the Calgary game that he was in for, makes you think that there's something more there, right? Why is the general manager of the Blues coming and watching the Flyers? So again, this is long-term scouting. This doesn't mean something is imminent. Doesn't mean that there's a trade happening right now. But we also know, Bundy, that Chief is a big fan of JVR. We know it. Right? Chief likes him, likes the way he plays. And I think that if you're looking to go salary for salary, you could probably still pull something off in the sense, maybe give the Blues a little something extra, a little draft pick or prospect
I talked to Chief yesterday. He didn't mention his love for JVR, but I'm going to circle back with him on that one today. Yeah, I'm not. You know what, Anthony? It's really interesting you say that, and I'm not taking a shot or laughing at you, but in the game today, right? Like you can look at JVR for what he is. I mean, he had a good start last year, and then he's not reliable in his own. I mean, he is what he is at this point. He's not reliable in his own zone. When he's scoring and getting power play points, he can be efficient, but he's not a 5-on-5 dynamo anymore. But it actually shows you if Chief really does think that highly of a guy like JVR, of really where the talent pool is at in this league right now, because I'm not taking a shot at JVR or you or Chief. It's just interesting that a guy like Craig Berube, who took a last place team in January 3 years ago and won the Stanley Cup, could insert a guy like JVR in the lineup. But that also shows you maybe what Tarasenko's like, if Tarasenko is that piece that's involved. Now he's got 16 points this year, Tarasenko, in 18 games with 7 goals on the year. I will say this, earlier in the season when I asked Chief how his team was going, because I'll just give coaches a call, the guys I play with. He said, I really like the way things are going. They had a blistering start, right? They've tailed off a little bit lately, but he did tell me that Tarasenko had a good start to the year for him. And that was probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I talked to Chief all the time.
But that's the thing.
It's also, I mean, in terms of a hot start, he had 4 goals in the first 6 games. That's about as hot as it's going to get, right? Unless you're Cam Atkinson starting out for the Flyers this year. The problem I think that you run into with Tarasenko, and by the way, Anthony, the idea that you quote, might have to throw in something, end quote, with JVR to get Tarasenko. I don't know what that little thing you think is, but that little thing is going to be a whole hell of a lot more than like a mid-round pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, you are right. And it's a very good question, because what Tarasenko is and what he's been this season, he's been scoring in bunches, which in fairness is what has kind of dogged JVR throughout his career, is being that streaky scorer. Tarasenko had 4 goals in the first 6 games, and then he had a 3-game streak where he had a goal in back-to-back games, and that's it. There are a lot of games where he doesn't factor in, where he's not producing points. It's not as if he's a point per night kind of player. He's not right now. It doesn't mean that he couldn't be. But this gets back to that initial question of, if you went all in the offseason, or as close to all in as you could, you massively overhauled this roster. Some of the moves have worked. Atkinson, I think we can agree, has been a success. The Ellis move conceptually should be a success, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy, so that is a problem. If you were to go out, and again, in this kind of scenario, you're going almost dollar for dollar with these salaries, right? But there is going to have to be something that goes with it. So now I guess the question is, it probably won't be Morgan Frost, because God knows what Morgan Frost's value is in the league, unless he does come up here and he produces. Do you part with a guy like Cam York if you have to? Like, if the idea is we're going all in right now, we have to stay in this race, we have to stay in the hunt, make the playoffs, hopefully get Kevin Hayes back, hopefully get Ryan Ellis back in a month and a half, 2 months. Do you do that in the hope that you're trying to make the most of another year of Claude Giroux, who has had arguably the best season of any Flyer, which we need to get into in a bit? Do you make that move knowing that you're going to have to part with a young player that you might think is quite promising, if it brings in a guy who could potentially be a difference maker? Tarasenko on the wing for Morgan Frost, if that's the way you're going to have to go for a lot of the season, is probably a better option than whatever you have right now that you can put with Morgan Frost, correct?
Yes, but you didn't let me finish what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, he would be, and yes, I would. If I'm Chuck Fletcher, again, I made the commitment that I made in the off season. So to me, I have to, I have to try to do whatever I can to have the team be successful this year. You can't have the Flyers be a failure this year. I just don't think you can. It ends up, it's going to cost a lot of people jobs. And then you almost get into a situation where it's like, maybe it's better to just blow everything up and start over and be a bad team for a couple years. Right. I mean, I don't necessarily know if they want to go that route. And I was only bringing up the Tarasenko thing to say that this might be something that they're still looking at. Obviously it was a player they were interested in the offseason. We knew that, we were told that. But I would rather go a different way, guys. You know, I would sit there and say, let's look at, instead of trying to trade salary for salary or be so caught up and wear the blinders to try and get this guy who's a power forward, which is something that's missing. I mean, on this team, you really don't have that kind of guy. Would you then, Bundy, I'll throw another name at you. Free agent at the end of the season. What would you spend if to reach out to San Jose for Thomas Hertl?
I like Thomas Hertl a lot. I mean,
It's like I said,
I don't.
Free agent at the end of the year. San Jose is not a great team.
You know, it's funny, guys. I don't. You know, I just how. You're right. I mean, there are guys like that you could pluck off teams because they kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Yeah.
In terms of being able to acquire guys, but it's a tough situation. You're right, because you come into the injuries. I'd like to find out more about what went on with Ellis. I mean, listen, yeah, you could say he's not playing and everything, but we gave up a whole heck of a lot. The team, I mean, ultimately, I mean, whatever Nolan Patrick ends up being, he ends up being, right? But he was a second pick overall. Gave away a 6'5" defenseman in Myers, who, again, maybe he can or can't think the game. I don't know yet. They'll find out. But they gave up a lot to get a player with damaged goods. So I don't know what, if Nashville knew it. I mean, clearly coming in, there had all been the speculation about getting a guy like, Ellis in here, but what was his history with the injuries? So again, when you go after guys like that with other teams, you have to be so sure. But I love Tomas Hertl. I have for a long time. He's been a really good player. Every time I saw him when I was covering games, he was efficient. He'd get around the net. He'd make plays. But again, where is he now at this stage in his career? How much better is he going to make the team? This is a group, guys, that's really dominated. I think it has been dominated still by the shadow of Claude Giroux. It still is the Claude Giroux show with this team. And he's played well. I know we're going to talk about this, but I guess perfect time to segue to it. Again, I think I said at the beginning of the year, and I don't mean any disrespect to Claude, but if he's the best player on the team, which he has been, then your team's probably not going to make the playoffs. That's the hard truth. Whether they're healthy or not, he's still the focal forefront of this team. And to turn the corner and move forward, you have to change the dynamic at the top, the leadership group, the guys that have been doing it. Listen, he had a great run to start his career. He's been a terrific Philadelphia Flyer. He's older now. And if a guy at that age is still the focal point and the part of the game plan of the opposition, then you're just not going to be a team that's going to be an elite club at this stage, no matter who you plug in. How many more 9 different players you can have in the summer, it doesn't matter. There has to be, they have to go out, guys, somehow and find a star power player, whether that's a 22 or 23-year-old. They need to give the fans, they need to give the prognosticators a different look of stardom with the Philadelphia Flyers, because it's not 28 anymore. That being said, he has played outstanding hockey. It's just not the formula you can have on a team that's going to be a Stanley Cup contender. Braden Point, Kucherov, they are dynamic star talent players that can carry their team to a Stanley Cup with a great defenseman in Hedman and Vasilevsky in the pipes. The Flyers are nowhere even close to the look of that team. No, not even in the same calendar.
Well, it makes me absolutely sick every time I see Braden Point play, because this is a drum that I banged for years on this show, Bundy. I hate restricted free agency. I think it's the biggest bullshit principle in the entire CBA. It's a non-existent thing. It doesn't belong. It just does not belong, because these, for a large number of front office executives, they don't have the balls to go and offer sheet a legitimate player. There have now been, over the last 3 or 4 years, legitimate difference makers on the RFA market who are young players that you could theoretically build your franchise around. And I brought this up before, but like Seattle, you had Pedersen and Makar, I believe, were both out there this past offseason. I look at the Flyers, I look at a bunch of other teams who needed to get younger, who needed young star power. Braden Point was an RFA, 2 years ago? Were there any murmurings of the Flyers or any other team getting involved on Braden Point? No. Now, is it partially because maybe Point knew that the Lightning were going to be this legitimate juggernaut and he was going to get a decent contract no matter what? Yeah. Could a team have theoretically gone out with an offer sheet and moved heaven and earth for him? I think so. Nobody did. So that makes me upset. what you're saying about star power is totally legitimate. Here's your problem. And it's, by the way, it's not a Flyer specific issue. It also exists in this town with the Sixers. You've screwed up with one of the highest picks you had. You blew it. And we can get all the pissed off Twitter trolls to start, banging the drum and like jumping out from under the bridge. Everybody said Nolan Patrick was the #1 overall prospect. It doesn't matter. This is why scouting matters. This is why listening to your scouts matters. You screwed up that pick, and it continues to have repercussions year after year. That should have been a player that could have been a legitimate star for your team. That should have been the guy that you could hand the mantle to once you're ready to move on from Claude Giroux, once Giroux is ready to take a reduced role on the team. You botched it. You effed it up, and now you have to deal with it. Star players, young star players, I don't know how the hell you're going to get one on this team outside of the draft. Because if RFAs aren't an option, and if you're like the GM of another team, is there any team right now that has a legitimate young star player who's going to want to trade for damaged goods or a past their prime player and a bunch of picks? I don't see it. Not even Seattle has it because, they effed up the expansion draft so bad. Anthony, where does the star power come from?
Yeah, and a lot of the star power is getting older, right? Like a guy like a Patrick Kane, you might be able to get like a guy like that, but they're making $10 million, and they're really actually, you know what, guys, they're not much different than a Claude Giroux. The difference is they had enough guys to win 3 Stanley Cups with elite company, right? In Chicago. So that's the difference between them and a guy like G right now. They already have the pedigree. They already have the championships. It's called Money in the Bank. And their fan base will still show up because it's Chicago, and they still have that group of players that are there. Last year there was a case, guys. They do happen, Russ. Like if you look at a couple malcontents, Dubois for Line A, right? Like that was a star. In terms whether they're star players remains to be seen, but that was a star power type of trade, right? That happened midseason. I'm in the belief of this, and I know Paul Holmgren was too, going back to it. This is a city you have to splash, and you have to splash your fans with it. You have to go out and make a big deal. The year the Flyers, for example, finished dead last in the league, and Homer took them back, the year and had a great run after the worst year in Flyers history, I think. He went out and got Briere. He made a trade for Tiemann and Hartnell. Those are splash trades, right? And then gave those guys contracts like right out of the gate. So that's, to me, what you have to do. And whether there's a young guy out there I agree with you, Russ, if there's the Flyers, listen, take advantage of what you have right now. You're owned by one of the biggest corporations in the world, and they have money. I know the Flyers want to run it like a, regular corporate entity that's separate from their parent, but like the Montreal and Carolina thing that went on in the last year, right? Where the Aho signing was made by Montreal, Carolina had to keep them. I mean, that's peon money. And I don't know what they were thinking with Montreal. I mean, they're owned by Molson. So when you get into doing these kind of deals, you have to, like when Homer made that act or tried to sign for Shea Weber, that's how you make a restricted free agent offer. You have to try to cripple the team that you're doing it to so they can't pay the bill. For Carolina and Montreal to go back and forth in that, it's kind of an embarrassment. But Carolina ended up winning that thing because they ended up getting Kotkaniemi on their offer sheet, and Montreal couldn't match it because of cap issues. So either you have to know what you're doing going in with that offer, or you absolutely have to wow the team where they simply say, we can't pay that. And he tried that with Nashville. I loved it. Shea Weber would have been here already 7-8 years, but it wasn't to be.
You also didn't have the same kind of restrictions on the salary cap that year.
Well, that is true, but there was still a cap in place. That's why they started front loading the signing bonuses a little bit, right? That factored into it, and front ending contracts where they started taking numbers off the back end of years. But Braden Point would have been an incredible find for a team. I mean, you would have a top 5 player in the league on your team.
Here, let's look really quick. This is us turning the page on the whole season. We're not actually doing that, but just for argument's sake, Line A is an RFA at the end of the year. Matthew Tkachuk, who we've talked about on this show, is an RFA at the end of the year. Either of those guys could be a help.
Well, Matthew Tkachuk, if you can get him here, I'll drive the truck myself and pick him up. I'll call his dad and tell him I got him. Don't worry, he's coming to Philly. But seriously, Matthew Tkachuk, for me, he would be my complete focal point as if I were the Flyers. no disrespect to Calgary, but usually when a guy has come out, he's an American player. He spends his time in Calgary. Unless you're going to get that really major long-term deal and you love that organization franchise, I would think that he would probably come back to an American team. That's just my guess. I don't know that. Maybe he absolutely loves Calgary. I love the city of Calgary, but I just feel when you start getting into that kind of number, the dollar actually becomes an issue. So I think he's going to take it to unrestricted free agency. And you know what, guys? They might be trying to unload a guy like Tarasenko right now because St. Louis is Kachuk's hometown team, right? The Blues. That would open up some cap space for them, certainly in the offseason, if that's what he wanted to do. Just a thought. But he would be, I would take Matthew Kachuk 20 times before I took Laine one time. That's just me.
Well, because he's a more complete player.
He is.
Yeah.
He plays the
He's
style
also
of
younger,
game.
right?
Yeah, he plays the style of game. No,
Kachuk's older.
Hold on. Kachuk's 24, isn't he?
yeah,
Am I
Kachuk's
crazy?
older than Laine, I believe.
Yeah.
I think he's older by about a
Is
year.
Laine 23?
Yeah, a year or two.
22 or 23.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let me update my sheet. And the correct answer is yeah, by a few months. Matthew Kachuk, 24.6 years old. Actually, no, yeah, and Laine is 24.2 years old.
Yeah.
Because we go by decimals. Anyway, could be interesting. And I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked Bundy before. Is there any alternative to getting this team impact help than LTIRing Kevin Hayes?
Well, yeah, and they're going to ultimately, if they choose to do that, if they choose to go after, stay all in and keep trying to push for playoffs this year, they're going to have to do that. The thing is you don't do it right away. There's reasons for that, Russ. It's very hard to kind of explain. It's, we look at the salary cap as a whole, like what the cap is, but in actuality, it's managed on a daily basis, day to day. And so the day that you put a guy on LTIR, you could save more money by waiting than by doing it now. So it's just a matter of smart bookkeeping, right? But yes, I think ultimately that's the right thing to do. Ultimately, the right thing to do would just be to look, Kevin Hayes, you got to get another procedure done, or even if you don't, like, we're going to find somebody to replace you. You get yourself healthy, and we'll get to the playoffs, and then you can come back in the playoffs when it doesn't matter. Where there's no salary cap in playoffs, we can have everybody healthy, right? So I think that's certainly a possibility. I'm just a little surprised, and Bundy, you mentioned this already. I'm just a little surprised that they're going with week to week for this, because we know what his injury is, right? Like, we know what he's experienced. We know that he had this surgery twice. It's not like that this is some kind of, secretive lower body, upper body. That's all we're telling you, and you're not going to get anything else. Everything else is going to be undisclosed. We know what his injury is. And he even talked about it after the game when he scored the goal. And he said that, at first he was scared to death because it was the same spot. And then, they told him he was okay, but now he hasn't played since. Right. So we know what his injury is. I think that one is a little bit more perplexing to me than Ellis, where we don't quite know. We have some ideas. We think we know. And these core muscle things are so tricky with every player. It's different with every player. Some you can play through, some you can't. Some get better with rest. Some need the surgery, whatever the case might be. But at the same time, why are we going just week to week with a guy who has shown that had the surgery, came back, started skating, injured it again, had a second surgery in the same spot, came back, started skating, has now injured it again? What's to make us think that, this will get better with just week to week rest, as opposed to, man, we got to go back in there and really figure out what the hell the problem is?
That's a fair question, right? That's up to the manager, the player, and the medical staff, to discuss that and what the best plan forward is. So, sometimes you get a player, guys, that jumps in too when a suggestion's made, like, we want to get you surgery, and the player's like, no, I'm going to let it rest and I can come back and it'll heal. But again, if this is just, I'm with you both on this. I think we're all in the sense that, like, what's the point of treating it, getting it to a point where, you can get back for that particular game, but no assurances that it's going to be good for the next particular game after that one, right? Because it keeps getting injured. So that, for me, I think this is a case where, and again, I don't know the whole details of it, but I'm guessing that it should be just shut the guy down, get him the proper surgery, get him into the rehab, and then get a player in here of some kind that's going to help. Because right now you're in limbo, and the worst part is everybody's sitting in limbo waiting on it. And that's the worst part for every other player, is like, well, where are we at? Believe me, when players are injured, you're always wondering when they're coming back, when they're getting healthy, as a player in the lineup. But there's nothing worse. And I went through it with Forsberg one year, guys. Remember that last year? Like, it was like his foot was in the bucket. I mean, he looked like a broken down horse some days. He had like two feet and 2 ice buckets all day. Then they were fixing his skates. And Harry Bricker was always trying to do maintenance. That becomes a burden too, when players are always wondering when that guy's coming back. That's why I say you send a message to the group saying, okay, we're going to shut him down. We're going to go find somebody that we can get in here with salary around the league. We're going to put that player in there, and we're going to hope like hell that this thing works, and then get to the playoffs. And you said, Anthony, have a full, no salary cap, where you can have as many guys as you want making whatever, like the Tampa Bay model last year with Kucherov. And so I think that should be the plan that they execute. Whether or not they do it or not will remain to be seen. It sounds like right now it's a week to week, whatever that means. But to me, that's more like a month to month. Like, I don't know how long something like that's going to take.
I mean, you have to rip the Band-Aid off the situation at some point, right? Otherwise, you're pissing away the season. Because
that's it, Russ.
I mean, if you go with this idea of, well, we don't want to shut him down for whatever reason. Like, maybe we're not going to make light of this or minimize it or whatever.
Sure.
But I mean, he's had a lot happen in the last few months. The loss of his brother, that's a serious thing. And maybe this team thinks that for his mental health, giving him the target of, like, get healthy, get back on the ice, help your team. All these, friends of his have been brought into the team. Like, maybe there's a hope that he's going to be able to recover. You get him back in, you reintegrate him, and it's good for his mental makeup. And if that's the case, can't fault them for it, right? At the same time, you have a team, and you have a team to run. And for better or worse, Comcast has a business to run on this side. They don't necessarily run it well, but they have to try. And wasting a season on the hope that a guy who's now had 2 core muscle injuries or 2 surgeries in the past 12 months, that might have to get another one. Like, that is not an intelligent model to try to lead you to playoff success. Here's the other problem. Even if he gets healthy, right? What's the one thing that happens when you're coming back from an injury? You're probably going to play tentatively, because you don't want to overdo it, especially for a guy who's tweaked the injury now. He came back, he had a very long, a nice offseason window to get healthy, came back, tweaked it, shut back down. Well, if you start favoring, or you start trying to nurse a potential injury, 1, you're going to start overthinking the game. 2, you might start to favor things, which opens you up for injury elsewhere. And 3, there's no guarantee that you're coming back at 100%. Even if he comes back and plays to the utmost, the highest level he's capable of playing in recovery, you're still not guaranteed getting the 100% Kevin Hayes you would need to be an impact player. So to me, it's like all the evidence is there. Everything that you could possibly need is there to say, you know what, unless we're totally wrong, unless he felt the slightest tweak, they've done all the scans and they think, yeah, you know what, seriously, 2 weeks, shut him down. We're going to give it one more go. And if that doesn't work, then we're going to go LTIR out and go surgery again. Fine. But if their entire season hangs in the balance on whether or not Kevin Hayes can come back and play at like 70% Kevin Hayes, and you're just crossing your fingers every game that he's not going to tweak, or that every practice he's not going to be able to participate fully because you have to, worry about this injury, well, then none of it really matters. Any of it. You're just delaying the inevitable, which is going to be shutting him down. That, again, is assuming that it's not just a minor tweak. Guys, I don't know what you do here, but if you can't bring in an impact player with that cap space that you should be able to get by putting him on LTIR, you will have once again done the same thing that Anthony and I have talked about every year we've done this show. You will have gone out and wasted another year of Claude Giroux's career. You will have gone out and wasted another productive year of his career. At some point, something has to give. there aren't that many more productive years left in his career. At some point, you either have to do right by him and send him out, and I guess theoretically blow it up, or you've got to do everything you can to give this guy a legitimate chance to make the playoffs and see what happens. I think you owe it to him. And if that's the case, there's no option other than to shut Kevin Hayes down until potentially the playoffs and go all in. But it's not going to be cheap, and it's certainly going to hurt.
The other problem is, as I mentioned earlier, the defense is starting to look shaky.
Mm-hmm.
And with Ellis out at least another month, if not longer, and I'm going to predict that it goes into January. I don't think he's back before the holidays. It makes you wonder that, can this group of defensemen that they have without Ellis survive? Because when you look at it, it's just, I mean, look, Braun's been okay this year. He really has. He's been one of the better defensemen, right? I mean, let's be fair to the guy. The guy's actually had a pretty good season so far. But at the same time, he's not a top pair guy. He's a, more likely bottom 4 than he is top 2. Ristolainen and Sanheim have had they've played better in more recent games. They weren't particularly noticeable last night, but prior to that, I thought that pairing has been pretty solid over a handful of games. But early in the season, they struggled. So when you look at it, say, okay, maybe they're trending right, but they've not been consistent. Yandel and Sealer have been awful as a pairing, 5-on-5, just awful.
Well, one doesn't belong in the NHL, and the other one's been atrocious at 5-on-5. Like, you were bringing him in, hopefully to maybe be a power play difference maker. So
my point to this is that we're sitting here talking about the fact that they can't score, and you got to go all in to try and help the team get more offense. Do they also have to figure out a way to get something else defensively? Is it that desperate now to where they have to say, man, we need both. We need to improve in both spots and as soon as possible? Or do you try and think, do you hope that the goaltending continues to be as good as it's been and that mediocre defense can get you by if you just add offensively? I mean, that to me is another question that I don't know if we have an answer to.
Well, here are some names, right? Because we talked about free agents before. Either UFA, well, these guys are all UFAs at the end of the year. Subban, Letang.
Nope.
Giordano.
Nope.
Boychuk.
Nope. He's done
Strawman.
anyway.
He's done.
No.
Strawman.
Nope.
Nick Leddy.
Nope.
You have one of your own.
Maybe Letty.
Okay.
If he can still skate.
You have one of your own in Ristolainen, right? Like that actually becomes its own thing too. If this team bottoms out, there's an entirely possible scenario here where they look to trade Ristolainen before the trade deadline if the wheels fall off.
But you got to try
that remains to be seen.
You got to try to get your first round pick back, because if they don't make the playoffs here, he probably isn't going to stay unless they extend him. But are they going to extend him for $5 million a year? Is that what it's going to cost? I mean, I don't know. I'm not paying that but guys, I think we have to start to look and say, like, how many guys in the league weren't made for the NHL 10 years ago? They expanded teams in. It's 60 more jobs, right, in the last 5 years since Vegas came in that were once owned by minor league players that are now in the NHL level. It might just be actually hard to find really good players that you can plug and play. Because there's guys you're going to see up now, like you see them every night where I've never heard of guys before. Injuries, COVID, more teams, more players available to the lineups. I think it's a state of the times, guys. But you're right. If the Flyers decide that it does bottom out and they do not climb the standings, then yeah, I would start looking for ways to start securing picks and reloading this thing. That's why I said I think they should have started doing this 4 or 5 years ago. And what if the Rangers did that, right? Nobody noticed. They went through the rebuild for 2 or 3 years. They got Panarin, they got a star guy, They grew their young defensemen, and they're probably going to be a force. They ended up getting a top pick with his name just eluded me for a second here, but nonetheless, yeah. I mean, they've got high-end talent. Why didn't the Flyers could have done that same thing. And I think the fans would have understood better than still shoveling out the same product year after year with tweaks around what they view as the top end guy. And that's Giroux, I guess Provorov. And you have questions, there's quite legitimate questions about the defense. He's still not a number one defenseman. They sell him like he is, but he's not. Does 2-2s make a 1 with Ellis, the Ellis pairing with Provorov? We never had a chance to see that. But Provorov is not a standalone number one defenseman. He needs to play with a guy that's going to help him out. And that's pretty obvious at this point. To me, it is anyway.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing. We talked for a long time about the Hextall years as GM, and how he did a nice job drafting. Like, he was always a good drafter. And this was the thing that, he was noted for when he was with the Kings and working with Dean Lombardi in LA, that, Hextall was in charge of drafting, amateur scouting, and that was his thing. And go back and look at his drafts. And while there have been, look, you can't knock the fact that Sanheim's an NHL player, Konechny's an NHL player, Provorov's an NHL player. They were all first round picks. Okay. So you should get an NHL player with your first round picks. But he's also had first round picks of Herman Ruptsov, who's not an NHL player, Nolan Patrick, who we've covered a bazillion times on this program, that we think that
next year is going to be the year, Ant.
Something wrong there. and Morgan Frost, who we're now finally going to see that he's healthy and see, is this kid an NHL caliber quality player? So you could say he's kind of 50-50 in the first round. And then look beyond that. What have you really had? You had Nick Aube-Kubel, who turned out to be a bust. You had Mark Friedman, who turned out to be a terrible teammate, and they waived him. You have Lindblom, who, okay, fine, but hasn't scored this year. What else do you have? Carter Hart, right? But that's it. Maybe
he's been very good.
Maybe Wade Allison becomes something. Maybe Tanner Laczynski becomes something. Who knows? But beyond that, you really haven't gotten anything. So maybe it's time to sit here and say part of the problem that the Flyers are experiencing right now, and there is because for 4 years, the guy who was supposed to be doing great drafts didn't really do that well drafting for them to have the depth that they need to be able to compete at the NHL level this year. So that's why when you say Bundy, maybe they should have done this before. Maybe they should have taken the path that the Rangers did. You're right. Maybe they should have, but there's no guarantee that they would have drafted well when you see how they drafted under Hextall when he was here.
Well, and that leads to another thing too, right? Because part of it's evaluation and the guys you draft, and part of it is coaching, right? So they've had a few changes at the AHL level. And now I guess we come back to the same song and dance that it feels like we do every other year with this team. There's a question right now about coaching at the NHL level. There are questions about the power play specifically, which has been absolutely abysmal for the vast majority of the year. There's been an unwillingness to make any kind of change, at least in terms of the man who's running the power play unit. If the head coach won't make that change, and if we're still seeing the same systemic issues with the power play this far into the season that were also part of the issues with the power play last season, does it then bring into question if there needs to be a change on the bench? Bundy, at what point, and I know we talked about this going into the season, at what point does Chuck Fletcher strongly have to make a consideration as to either Michel Therrien or Alain Vigneault's position as a coach on this staff?
Yeah, well, what you do is first you change the players if you can, right? So you went out and acquired guys in the offseason. Whether they're broken parts or not remains to be seen. With Ellis injury. And again, I want to play the optimist here and say he's going to be back. But again, I don't know that. I hope he is more than anything. So eventually what you do then is you have to take a look at the coaching staff. And you know what, Anthony, I know we talked about this a couple times, and Russ probably mentioned it to you as well. But we're at a time now after tonight where historically, I know it's changed and the trend's been bucked a couple times. In fact, the Flyers did it once themselves. But what has gone on here now is a case where you're at the American Thanksgiving, and they always say that the 8 teams that are usually in at the American Thanksgiving is somehow where it sits at the end of the year. So that's an interesting one because they're not there, right? They're back now at the bottom. They're climbing the standings again. Only the Islanders and the Metropolitan are behind the Flyers right now. So again, that's not a scientific math, but then again, what I'm saying is that if that's the visual, then eventually, whether the GM has to turn his eyes towards the coaching staff and see if that makes a change. I don't necessarily know if it does. I'm not sure it's going to make a change. Maybe you'll be infused with some more life, perhaps, with a new coaching change. But there's no guarantee on that either. But in sports in general, I mean, when things aren't going the way that they're supposed to go, and you decide that you're going to make changes, it eventually will fall on the coaches at some point. When that is, or how eager Chuck is to do that, remains to be seen. But certainly there'll be a lot. I think the next 2-3 weeks here with this remaining difficult schedule that Anthony told us about a couple of weeks ago was going to probably tell the real tale of who this team is this year.
I thought Ant was going to jump back in there, and he didn't. How about that?
Well, I mean, Bundy's right. I mean, I don't know, Russ. What more do you expect there? I mean, it is what it is at this point, and it's not good. I don't necessarily know if making the coaching change is what you need at this point. Like I still get the sense, and Bundy, tell me if you think differently. I still get the sense that this group likes each other. This group likes playing for this coaching staff. Like there doesn't seem to be any real discord from the locker room, and toward a coach that like sometimes that you start to hear about it, you start to see it in the way that the team plays. Like I have not, even though they were not good last night at all, I still don't think that, one game within a vacuum is a suggestion that, the team doesn't buy into what the coach is saying at this point. So I feel like it's a little bit harder to go after the coach at this juncture. I still think it's too early. You have a brand new team with there were more than 50% of the lineup turned over, and you got to find a way to gel. And then you have some injuries that you have not been able to deal with and manage well because they've had injuries elsewhere and their depth isn't very good to begin with. So it's kind of hard to put that on the coach. So I think he gets more time. I know people are going to talk about it because they lost 3 in a row, but keep this in mind. Prior to these 3 games, they had not lost 2 in a row. The fact that they didn't score was there, and we could see this kind of coming. But at the same time, this team has been resilient. They have bounced back. They have played games where they got down and fought back to at least get a point out of it, right? So, I mean, there's some stuff there that is, I sit there and say, I understand why fans or why, an analyst might say, hey, the coach is on the hot seat. Okay, fine. But at the same time, look at it from a different perspective. That there are a lot of factors that are kind of playing into this, and I think that this team is still together. I don't think that they're apart at this point, and looking for Chuck to make a change at the coach. I don't think the players want to see a change at the coaching.
Here's just one thing, Anthony, and I agree with you. They've been resilient since day one. I mean, you go back to the early parts of the schedule, and they've won games. I'll give them credit. They beat Carolina, they beat Edmonton. Those are really good, solid.
Washington.
It's 2 teams that were unbelievably. I think Edmonton was undefeated, and I think Carolina might have had 1 loss at the time. Here's the problem, though, right? You get those early season games where things come together. Carter Hart was spectacular. I'm just looking at their last few games. So the Carolina win, they should never have won that game. Carter Hart's played the best game I've seen him play as a Flyer. They win the game.
Yep.
Then they go to Dallas and get smoked. Terrible back-to-back. I don't like the travel involved with that. It was a tough game. Dallas was reprimanded by ownership. They walked into a buzzsaw in Dallas, and they got the short end of the stick. They come back home and play Calgary, right, for Hall of Fame night. Calgary should have won the game. They were out. They outplayed the Flyers, I thought, for the majority of that hockey game. A lot of plays in front. Carter Hart good again. Right. So you're getting into some richer competition now, right? A lot of depth to these teams. Gaudreau was flying that night. So then you got Tampa, Boston, Tampa. You got a point against Tampa because Giroux ended up having that great play at the end of the game, shot it through the myriad of bodies. They tie it, losing over in the shootout. Then but here's the problem, guys. Then you got Boston, right, coming in playing well. They hadn't played in a bit. They dominate the Flyers in that game. Same thing with Tampa last night. So the last 3 games, you're getting high-end talent. You're playing teams that are at the top echelon, or at least they have been, right? They've been recognized as that by other teams, and you fell in all of them. You're lucky to get a win against Calgary. Now you got Florida tonight. Bob has not lost in regulation yet.
They haven't lost at home either.
They haven't lost at home, right? Bob has. Yeah. So that's what you're up against. It's not like you're playing like bad, like lesser teams where you're kind of having a look at stuff. You're playing good teams now. And the fans in Philadelphia, as we said, they're not stupid. They know what's going on. Flyers can't play with the top teams in the league. And I'm just going to say it, as they're constructed right now, they might win the game tonight. They're just not better than Florida, and I wouldn't want to see that in a 7-game series.
Right.
That's really where they're at for me.
Let's try to be fair here to a kid that's going to, get some playing time here for the foreseeable future, assuming he can stay healthy. And that's Morgan Frost. What do you guys expect out of him? And at this point, is there really much that you can expect? It seems like every time he's gotten a shot to come up with and play any kind of meaningful role for this team, he's gotten hurt. So at this point, like, what do you expect? Bundy, you mentioned at the start of the show, he's nearly a point per game player. I believe he has 1 fewer point than games played, but he's right there.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily dominate the A though, but can we expect much out of him?
Every once in a while, a player comes along, right? And you're trying to, he has all the accolades, right, Anthony? Like, he's been a dominant junior player. He looked like he was playing with little kids some nights. And then you think, well, the transition is going to be interesting to the NHL. What did he do, or what can he do to bring that flair that he had at the lower level up here? And I think the one thing, guys, in a lot of ways for me is, I don't want to say the new regime. I feel like he probably feels, and I think from the outside looks like he's been jerked around a little bit, right? Like, he was told, you're going to come in, we got injuries, you're going to make the team out of camp. Well, he didn't play well in camp, so they sent him to the minors. That's a mental beating on a guy. If he comes up here, you're not going to see a great dynamic defensive player, but neither is Giroux. So what I want to see from Morgan Frost, just be a little bit more effective in the D zone, but at the offensive end, do the things that you did that made you successful before. Don't stay right in, like, and I'm saying this, stay in the system, but do those things. Be a creator, right? And sometimes when you create, you make mistakes in hockey when you have the puck. But he's a guy to me that I think needs to have the puck on his stick. And I think he'll never get the opportunities a young player like he's going to get now, because he's going to have to see those top end minutes because of the situation the Flyers are in. I believe he actually may have scored his first goal in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. I think he had maybe it was Carolina. Then I think he scored again in Florida the next night.
His Frost's first goal was against Florida.
Okay, so I remembered that actually covering the game.
Look at you!
So again,
look at you! You weren't just there for your good looks. You remember being there and the whole hockey thing. Good on you.
Yeah, but just let the kid play. Live with his mistakes for now and leave him alone for 5 games. Let's just see where that goes, and then let's judge him fairly from that point on. But when I say that, like, again, he's a tweener. He's a tweener, but he doesn't have to be a tweener in this league anymore. There used to be 2 lines, and then there used to be 2 energy lines. Now they expect you to have 3 lines that can play with 1 energy line. He should absolutely, in the way that this league is now and the players in it, he should be playing in the NHL, and I don't know what the delay is. I'd like to see him take that step for himself and, quite frankly, for the Flyers. And I think it's time that he does that.
Well, and that, I think, brings us to an interesting thing here. And AV has shown a lack of willingness in a lot of instances to play young guys in meaningful roles. Bundy says leave him alone for 5 games. If he comes up and isn't on that second line, are are the Flyers putting him in a position to be successful?
He's
If
going
you
to be on
bring him
that.
up.
He's going to be on that second line because Broussard is out. Broussard's not going to play, so they're not going to move. I don't know. Maybe they put Lawton there. I don't know. I don't see it. I think that they're going to try and keep. I mean, you got Giroux and Atkinson on the wings. I think that they're going to try and have a playmaker there with them, and you know, Frost is a lot. I mean, if Broussard can play in that spot with them, Morgan Frost can play in that spot with them, right? So I don't see the difference there. So I think Frost is going to play second line with Giroux and Atkinson and see if it works. Here's the thing that I have. I don't think Broussard's injury is long. I think it's a short-term injury. I think that we're looking at a situation where Frost might not get as much of a look as we think. I think if this could be a 1-2 game kind of thing and then right back down again, unless he really kind of blows them out of the water with the way he's playing. Like again, we've seen this before, Bundy, right? I mean, I don't think that this is a situation where it's like, okay, Morgan Frost has arrived, folks. He's here the rest of the year. He's going to lead the way on that second line.
He'd already be here if he were God,
right? Exactly.
Right? Like he wouldn't be in the minors if he were already God. So that's like taper your expectations. But just I'm saying this to fans, let the kid play. Just let him play. Let him finally just be who he is. And if he really can't play, then we'll figure that out too when we get there. Right. Maybe he just can't play at this level. I don't know, but I believe he can. I really do think that this kid just needs to give him a shot, get out of his way, leave the young guys alone, and just let him go out. And if he makes mistakes, we'll see those too. But we have to see what he can do.
Well, that's a question. So this is why it's, to me, this is a conundrum. This is why it's a problem for the Flyers right now, because they're in a situation where they can't afford to lose games right now. They can't afford to have bad play, right? They have to try and win. And so you sit there and say, well, okay, let him play and let him develop and let him be, he's a young player. Let's see what he can do. I'm okay with that, but that would almost be kind of like saying, well, if he makes the mistakes and it costs us, so be it. We want him to be a better player. We want him to be in our lineup long term. Like, that's why I look at it and say, I think the timing of this, they don't want him. I don't think that they wanted him here just yet. I think that they were hoping that they would be in a better spot when they can bring up Morgan Frost and not have to sit there and worry about, hey, if he screws up, this could really end up hurting us. I think that that's why they wanted to wait a little bit longer before he got here. And so to me, this may not be that long of a call up. This might be just a short-term thing because he's the best available option to come in and fill in for Broussard right now. I'm not certain that Morgan Frost is going to get 5, 6, 7 games. He may only get 1 or 2. And like I said, unless he comes in here and he is great right away, unless he comes in and he impresses and is playing the style of game that Alain Vigneault wants, I would not be surprised if he gets sent right back down.
Would certainly be an interesting scenario if you're right, because damn well that the fans are going to lose their mind if he's only here for a couple of games and looks all right. I think Bundy's right. Got to give him at least 5 games. Let him settle in. See what you've got. I mean, if Hayes is going to be out again, if we're circling back to that, if Hayes is going to be out and you're going to play this like wait every other week kind of nonsense, if that's the plan, you have to have somebody in there that you can rely on, or that you at least have to give a shot to. They don't have anybody else in the organization that you could theoretically put in that 2C role and hope has the talent, except for one guy, guys. If Frost doesn't work, do you move Claude Giroux to 2C?
I don't think that's effective either, but I mean, you might have to, Russ. He's been there, right? He's been a center most of his career. It's interesting. I just saw something on Twitter here, and it was actually from our friend Bill Meltzer talking about Bob Roadtruck talking about for the play-by-play in Lehigh, and he said Frost says that it took him time to recover his timing, and admits it took time mentally to get in the right frame of mind after being cut from the Flyers after 3 preseason games. So we were just talking about that, really, about that's a mental shot too. When you get sent down there, you got to really pick yourself back up again and get into the mode of saying, well, I'm not on an NHL team. I'm in the American League. And I will say this, it can actually be harder sometimes playing in the American League for an NHL type talent player. That's why I said with him, guys. And again, I didn't know, I knew that would have affected him because he was basically told, just come in here and be good and you're going to have a spot on the roster with Hayes out in training camp. I just think what you're seeing now with this team is a case where that's why I'm in the belief, and Anthony doesn't seem to think that AV, right, where he's going to give him enough rope to let himself go out and flourish. I just want to see him go out for a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, and just play, and nobody talk to him at all. Just let his game dictate what it is. Because when a coach starts talking about your game and you're an offensive guy, and you're like, well, you didn't do this well in the D zone, and you got to be here, and then the guy starts thinking about everything instead of doing what he does best. I know he's not the best player in his zone. I know he's not going to ever be the best player in his zone, but can he put points on the board? Because the problem is in this league now, it's really hard to find high-end talent that can get you goals. Doesn't mean you're going to win with those guys in the playoffs, but it'll at least get you enough points where they're creative enough to put you on a team that get you the playoffs. And I think that's where the Flyers are at. I think that's been the theme of this episode this week is what can they do to stay relevant at this point and to win games where they're still in the pack, where when you turn the calendar year and it becomes a dogfight down the stretch, are they close enough to make it interesting? And I'm going to be honest with you guys, where they are right now, I'm very, very nervous about those prospects, to be honest with you. I am.
Well, I guess that's probably an okay spot to wrap up the on ice product. I do want to bring up really quickly the response to last week's episode before we get out of here. A lot of people had reactions to last week's episode, especially to the clip of Bundy talking about the Flyers ownership, some of the decisions that were made leading up to the Flyers alumni game and to the Hall of Fame induction ceremony being an hour before puck drop and all that. And Anthony, I believe if memory serves, there were only a couple of negative responses from anybody who I think had anything to do with the organization. The very interesting thing. Yeah. Oh, that's right. It was one. It was one person who got a little bit upset, or at least voiced to you being upset about the contents of the episode. And once again, we're going to open this up to the fine folks who get themselves all worked up over our podcast. Refute what we have to say. Go back to last week's episode and present to us what we had wrong. Let us know what we got wrong. Let Bundy know. Let Anthony know. Let me know. What did we say that was incorrect on last week's episode? I think that there continues to be this issue, and based on the alumni that made their feelings known to any one of us or to people who currently or formerly have worked for the organization that have also voiced their support of the episode last week, I think it's pretty safe to say that there is I don't know if it's a blissful ignorance, but there certainly seems to be a disconnect, a little cognitive dissonance in the way that a few people, maybe two in this organization, view things versus the way that practically everyone else does. Apparently these two people think they're doing a great job running the team. And I guess I'm just going to point out a few anecdotes, if you guys don't mind. This past week, we heard from somebody who was named the Toyota Flyers Fan of the Year, who said that after being named the Fan of the Year, radio silence from the organization. I don't remember what it was that they were supposed to get, but they didn't get it. They had to reach out to the team.
And what did the team say to him?
I don't remember. What did the team say, Ant?
Oh, we forgot about you.
Ah, yes. Speaking of
The
people they
season
forget
ticket holder of the year.
Yeah. Speaking of people they forget about, the season ticket holders. I mean, listen, this has been a consistent refrain over the last few years that season ticket holders have felt as though they're not valued, that the family atmosphere that once existed, the feeling of being part of something has dissipated, and that there's been this transition to the corporate atmosphere that Comcast cares. I mean, that Comcast likes. I mean, sorry guys, I don't mean to come into this episode and end with bad attitude. I mean attitude, but I just want to make sure that we're fair and we're balanced. We've been hit with more and more anecdotes of people who have become disaffected by what this organization has been doing over the last few years. And it's amazing that there are still people within the organization who would have the gall to question the things that are said or to voice that they're displeased by the decisions that were made in terms of programming, that we don't fall in line with the rest of the Philadelphia sports media who covered this team. Look, I think in the aftermath of last week's episode, it was brought to my attention that there are some other people who are typically rainbows and smiles about the organization who were not rainbows and smiles after what happened with last week's Hall of Fame ceremony and the alumni game. Listen, if all the people who blow rainbows and smiles up your ass are also coming out and saying this wasn't handled well, chances are you screwed up. And instead of pointing the finger at us as if we're blasphemers, do an internal audit of yourselves. Figure it out. Do better. And anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I think you had the nice little monologue there, but I think all Bundy and I need to really say at this point is that I know for a fact from the 4 years we've been doing this podcast, this was the most feedback that I've ever gotten from anyone, from any episode that we had. And all the feedback that I got was positive, whether it was former players, former coaches, current employees of the team, former employees of the team. Everyone thanked us profusely. Even some fans that were DMing. I got so many DMs from fans that I couldn't even get back to everybody. I feel bad that I haven't had a chance. So if you DM me, I promise you I'll get to you. But there were so many. I started answering a couple, and then they just kept pouring in. I'm like, I don't have time to answer all these DMs. So I'm going to answer. I will answer everybody. I promise I will. We had so many there as well of fans thanking us. The response was so overwhelmingly positive that, like, I feel great about the fact that we did that episode last week. And I have a feeling that there's going to be more like it down the road when we have some other things that we're working on that might, come to light that are going to be really, really good for the fans to know. And maybe some people in the organization are not going to be happy to hear.
You know what, guys? I'll just say this. I didn't know either, Anthony. Like I'm a passionate guy, and I've had passionate tirades before, including Sidney Crosby. But when I do it, it's nothing's designed. That's how I feel. That's how I am. And any of my friends would be able to tell you they've heard it, whether I'm sitting at a bar 15 years ago or we're sitting at a fireside watching an Eagles game. I get passionate about whatever I was. But I could tell you this. I have over 70 text messages and social media inbox from former players, teammates, national broadcasters, Flyers Hall of Famers themselves. Yes, multiple that said, spot on, Bundy. Love it. I mean, if I clipped them together and tweeted that out, first of all, they wouldn't probably want that. It would give the absolute vindication that you're looking for from what people have seen. I didn't do it for that. I did it because it's what I've seen. And it disgusted me. Yeah. But the amount of players and feedback I've had from people you would not believe, or the Flyers themselves would not believe, would be knee-buckling if they knew. So again, I just be better, like Russ said. That's all. Just be better. There's a long lineage and history of this franchise that was, when I have had fans come up to me in the last few days, anyone that's walked up to me, or I'm going to a supermarket or a Wawa when I get back, it's just talking about the past of what those days meant to them and what Flyers hockey stood for. I don't know if there's ever been a relationship between a group of fans and a team quite like there's been between the Flyers and their fans, and vice versa. It's a really, really unique thing. It's hard to really tell that story unless you've experienced it. And I think a lot of the ire came from those fans, guys, that quite frankly have lived and died and breathed and died for this organization since its inception. And that's because of what Ed Snyder had brought to this franchise. And that was a family run business where the players and the fans were beloved and they cared a lot about each other. That's why the carnival was so important over the years, and all the things that ownership had done for players and vice versa, and the relationship the players have with the community. So that's really the things that I've seen dissipate over time. And then I felt were so important to this franchise and to the great fans of Philadelphia that love this hockey team.
You know what I've realized, Bundy? Ant and I have talked about this a lot. And It feels like the people at the top were so hell-bent on erasing Ed Snyder from the franchise that they're almost like a jilted lover. It's like you dated somebody, right? And you cared about them, and then for whatever reason, it didn't end well. And rather than building on what could have been positive memories or building on positive experiences and going forward and like reopening your heart, right? And bringing everybody back in, instead of doing that, they were so hell-bent on whitewashing the legacy of a man who built the thing that they've caught so many people in as collateral damage. They've caught fans, season ticket holders, alumni, current and former employees of this team. There's nothing special about the Philadelphia Flyers right now. They are just another team. It wasn't always like this. You know it from playing in the organization for working. Ant knows from working, covering the team, working in the organization. I, as a mere outsider, as somebody who sits back and watches things unfold, the Flyers used to be special. There's nothing about them right now that are special. And until the people at the top are willing to accept that and to accept that things need to change, this will be nothing more than a fourth-rate team in a top market that will still be able to have some semblance of success financially or ratings-wise because people are attached to what the team used to be and because they exist in a big market. But if this team were relocated tomorrow, it wouldn't move the needle in Philadelphia the way that it would have 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And that is because of what's been done over the last few years. And it's a shame to see. The only hope that we have here, I think, is that those people wise up at the top and maybe take some constructive criticism for the first time. And if they do, maybe things will get better. Then again, there's no past precedent that shows that they will.
Good luck with that.
So with that, I think it's time to end.
We have some 5-star reviews, don't we, Russ?
Oh,
You know,
we missed it last week too. Our 5 stars. We never
All
got
right,
to
fine.
it. We were so.
I think we have like 4. I think we have like 4 or 5.
Do we really?
Did
Did we? Do you have them pulled up?
No, I don't. I figured you would pull them. I saw them. I
I'll-
saw them in
I'll
the
pull- listen,
chartable
I'll pull
thing
them
that
up.
came around.
Well, of course, we know that Lee C. Oh, that was the thing I forgot to mention, by the way, while I'm pulling these up. Jason Martinez, that sly dog. You see what he did?
I did see it.
Total
But,
dick move.
Well,
Dick move.
it's stupid.
We love
It's so
Jason
stupid.
Martinez, but dick move. He pulls the chartable rankings that show the hockey specific podcasts on Apple Podcasts, and he tweets it, and he tags us, Flyers Daily, Broad Street Hockey, and all 3 of us were in like the top 25 or something like that.
We were
or
16,
top,
17, 18.
That was it.
Yeah.
And if you notice, if you take a look at his tweet, Flyers Daily was on the up. I think they went up like 6 spots or something. And Snow the Goalie, and I think Broad Street Hockey also both dropped like, I don't know, like let's say double-digit spots.
Yeah.
Because the episodes had been out, I guess, long enough, and like it kind of works on trends. He waited until Flyers Daily got ahead of us before he tweeted it out.
Well, so
but we'll still show some residual. We'll still show some love. It is impressive that for a team that is what it is, that 3 Flyers podcasts are that high up in the hockey podcast rankings on Apple Podcasts. That's impressive. Good job to all those people.
It is impressive. But just to let Jason know that that we're on to him. His podcast is a daily podcast. So of course his downloads are going to be done daily. So he waited until our podcast was out for 5 days before he went. Of course, his daily downloads are going to be better than ours 5 days after our show comes out. And of course, that's how he snakes us by 1 spot. That's okay. We'll get him. We'll get him back.
You know what? I used to go on with Jason right before I did this, and he'd have me on all the time. Yeah, I mean, I'd go on for 30 minutes. I wouldn't stop talking. It's really funny how I haven't been on in quite some time now. It's like they told him, don't have him on again. Please don't have him on again. Have some balls and have me back on, son. I'll be happy to spill the beans in person, and I'll leave you hanging to answer for them. Can you do that?
Oh boy. Well, we'll see. It's an
Let's
open
do it.
invitation. Open invitation to Flyers Daily to have
I'd love to go on that podcast now.
have
I'll
Bundy
actually
back
boost
on.
the ratings for you. Have me on. I'll come on and we'll get down to the nitty gritty of what's going on.
Jesus. All right. Let's go to our 5-star reviews of the week. First, we have AGNNSD. 5 stars. Flyers Hall of Shame. Not only a small-time blog, but as a true fan of Flyers, I am truly dissatisfied and disappointed with this team. They constantly disrespect the past Flyers traditions and alumni. They also do not promote this team enough in the city. Instead, like Bundy always says, their only concern is rivaling Gritty with the Philly Fanatic. Instead of trying to grow the sport and reach of the team, all they want to do is fill their pockets. But as always, I love what you guys do and listen every week. Hopefully here in a few years, I can be able to join you guys up in press row. Cheers, guys. Keep doing great things. How about that? That was nice.
That's nice. Sounds like a young journalist who has his own little blog
Or herself. We don't know
her.
because it's
Could
just
be
a
her,
random
right?
random set of
Random set of letters.
Yeah.
Who wants to do what we do and then really enjoys our stuff. So thank you.
We had a 3-star review that we will not read. Up it to 5 stars, rip away, and then we'll bring it back. But 3 stars are for weenies. Don't be lukewarm. Go 5 stars or go home. And that leads us to our last one of the week, Shadow Racer 27. 5 stars, Hall of Shame. Great job, guys. Called you Bunny, Bundy. But can we call you Bunny?
No, it's a typo on the thing. He didn't see it when he started putting the Bundy.
Yeah, the little bunny.
Came up Bunny.
Oh, the little
Probably did it on his phone, right? In his auto.
Yeah.
Peter
Bunny.
Cottontail hopping down the bunny trail. All right, great job, guys. Bundy's fire during this episode about this organization's lack of respect to alumni and fans was spot on. Short, sweet, to the point. We love it. Thanks for the 5-star review.
I got more.
No, you don't.
No, I thought I did.
No, I had to tell you that a couple of them were we had Lee C. Checking in with the weekly, and Ari Logan checked in, and Ari Logan has left 5-star reviews before. This was a thing that we had a while ago. I know your memory's starting to slip as you get older.
I don't remember
but
Ari Logan sending that many of them, but that's okay.
I mean, we could read them, but I don't think we need to because they're repeat. We read them, we keep them in the they warm the cockles of our hearts. But we don't need people to constantly go back in and keep leaving 5-star reviews. I don't know if that affects us at all. I don't know. I hope not. But
okay,
what?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
Bundy, he said I was right.
I found
this never happens. Hey, on a positive note, guys, we're already up. At this point, we are up to 222 5-star reviews. We're at 222 5-star ratings, 210 5-star reviews. I think there's going to be a point in the very near future. We hit a certain number. We might do a big giveaway. Anthony's been talking for a couple of years about a few things that he's got that are, let's say, an attractive bonus. Bundy, we were talking about something before the show as well that might be an attractive bonus to somebody if they leave a review, and maybe we'll do some kind of a raffle, a nice giveaway of sorts, maybe an experience. We'll see. I'm just going to float that out there. So if you've been listening to the show for a long time, or if you're a new listener and you enjoyed the show, go over to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. If you don't know how to do that, find somebody who does, make an Apple account, and then, I don't know, leave the 5-star review and then never touch the Apple account ever again. That's fine. That's what it's all about. Leave the 5-star reviews. Make Anthony smile. Make Bundy smile. I'll smile as well. Don't forget, you can find podcasts wherever you get it. Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And most episodes you can find over on youtube.com/crossingbroad. Even if you just search Snow the Goalie, you'll find the playlist in the Crossing Broad channel. You can go back and watch some of our favorite episodes and some of our favorite interviews that we've done. So what's up, Bundy?
Happy Thanksgiving. Were we going to say that? The both of you guys and your families.
Yes.
I love you both, guys. I'm thankful that I've had a chance to come on this show this year and talk hockey again and then in a regular professional format, professional being the key word. But you know what? I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to you guys, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody, all our followers and people that stick with us, Flyers fans in general, and the Flyers organization as well. I'd like to wish them a happy Thanksgiving also.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you too. But Russ and I should have been cognizant, and we weren't, But last month, we should have been cognizant to wish you happy Canadian Thanksgiving, and we forgot.
Yeah.
So we do appreciate you.
Nostra culpa.
Yeah, yes, we do appreciate you bringing it up here. But happy Thanksgiving to you guys and to all of our listeners as well. And we'll catch you on the flip flop.
Happy Thanksgiving, gents. Let me throw this out to you. Let's pull back the curtain 1 second, and this will be the last thing. I'm going to give you guys nine Thanksgiving items. You need to tell me which one has to go.
9.
Yeah, I like
just
that.
Listen. Okay. These are 9 things that you could theoretically have on your Thanksgiving Day plate, but I want you to get rid of one of them. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
Turkey, rolls, mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, stuffing, pie, green bean casserole, ham, gravy. Do you need the list again?
Mac and cheese gone. Mac and cheese.
Wow. That's a hot take.
And
You
that's,
wanna-
that's one of my favorite dishes, mac and cheese. I love, no, not for Thanksgiving dinner. It'll fill you up too much. Get it out of there.
I'll give you. You want a hot take? You want my hot take? Turkey.
Dude, great. Let's have the ham and scrap the turkey.
I eat the ham. I prefer the ham. We make a whole turkey and a whole ham, right? But I prefer the dark meat in the turkey. I actually think the turkey. If I'm going to eat the turkey at all, I'm going to go dark. The white meat just drives me. It's blah.
That's
plain.
because you don't cook it right. Continue. Sorry.
I don't
Cook
cook
it
it.
in the gravy.
I mean, I'm not even cooking it, so it's just too plain to me. So I will go I'll do a little bit of dark meat turkey, but I'd rather have the ham because my favorite thing about Thanksgiving is all those extras. Is everything else. I eat everything else. So therefore, and I eat all day because it starts with the football game at noon, right? With the Lions and the Bears tomorrow. Woohoo! Can't wait for that one.
Oh,
And then you got the Dallas game, and then you got the game at night. So we're just eating nonstop.
Dallas Raiders in the afternoon is going to be pretty good. I think
Dallas
that's
Raiders
actually
will be
going to be a
all right.
pretty,
Raiders are
pretty
kind of
entertaining
going
game.
south.
Yeah, they
But
are.
you know what? Be another big game, guys. Friday, that Black Friday game. You know, it's funny. I don't want to go talk about too long. Anthony, I know you know this going back to the 90s. There's never been a bigger sellout game of the year than the Black Friday game.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see what the crowd looks like this week. It's a real gauge in terms of where people are at in their interest of their team. 3:30 Friday is the Flyers Black Friday game.
Yeah, it's a weird time though, Bundy. That's the one thing. The 3:30 start. I don't necessarily know if I remember it being starting at this time. They used to start it like at noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
It
was like
should
an
be at
early-
11 in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they should make it at 11 in the morning. I know the players would complain. Have the game, get the family down to the parking lot early,
Yeah.
and get the hell out of the building. I think I love that game. The players love that game. And I always love the family atmosphere around it to get the crews down. And so it was a really, really special Flyers game for everybody involved.
Yeah. It's just a weird time this year. That's all.
It is.
I'm
So.
still trying to process Anthony saying no to the turkey. That's very upsetting to me. in a whole
If I
lot
had
of
to
ways.
pull one out, that would be what I would pull out.
Why wouldn't you get rid of the rolls? What the hell's the point of the rolls?
Oh, butter
you have
rolls?
stuffing.
Are
You
you
have
kidding
stuffing.
me?
You have
Buttered
stuffing. It's
rolls
redundant.
are phenomenal. King's Hawaiian. You ever had the King's
Now,
Hawaiian?
here's I've learned a lot in this real brief thing. Your Thanksgiving meals suck. There is
my
no
God,
doubt.
You have no idea. Russell.
Garbage. You know why? Because you're touting King's Hawaiian buns.
We don't
which you
have
could
King's
buy
Hawaiian buns at the
throughout the
Thanksgiving
year.
meal.
Throughout
we don't
the
have
year.
it at Thanksgiving meal.
And by the way, the notion that your turkey is too dry, your white meat, it's probably because you're cooking it like a Neanderthal. As I told you on press row one day,
Mom, do not listen to this
the
episode.
perfect way to cook the turkey, and I'm going to educate your mom, who I'm sure is not a day past 50. Fantastic lady, I'm sure. You have to cut the backbone out. You have to spatchcock it, or you break the turkey down. White meat, dark meat. You have to spread them out so that you get an increase of surface area. And then you pull the dark meat before you pull the light meat, or vice versa. It depends. Depends on how big of a turkey it is. But the light meat and the dark meat don't cook at the same rate. You have to be careful. But when you separate the turkey, you're increasing the likelihood of being able to get a nice crispy skin and juicy white meat. It can't
There's so
happen. We
many
do it every
things
year at this
wrong,
house.
Russ. There's so many wrong things about eliminating the turkey altogether. I mean, you get no turkey sandwiches the next day. I was even going to bring Anthony a nice fresh turkey sandwich at a Black Friday game if I make my way down there.
Okay, but here you go though, Bundy. I'll agree with you on this. I'm eliminating turkey from the Thanksgiving dinner, but a nice turkey with mayonnaise on white bread the next day is a great little sandwich. You're
I agree,
absolutely
but
right.
you
That's
can't
a good lunch.
You can't eliminate it from the dinner and then pull it out the next day. That's
No,
not how
you
this
can't
works.
make a turkey for sandwiches. You got to eat it at the dinner.
That's really upsetting. We've learned a lot today. I'm not going to say that this makes Ant a domestic terrorist, but I'm just saying that we might have to put Ant on the watch list. Getting rid of the turkey is un-American. You disgust me. You are a disgrace to our nation. Good day, sir.
He's gonna have a turkey lasagna. All right, let's wrap it up, Russ. Got
Yeah, it's time to
basketball
go.
on, kid.
It's time to go, guys. Thanks for listening to Stir the Goalie. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.